Is connecting. Good morning, or I guess good afternoon. As of 1 minute ago, it is noon now. Welcome and thanks for joining us, and thanks for spending your lunch hour with us. I'm Gina Woodward. I'm with the Small Business Development Center here in Amarillo with West Texas A&M University. Thanks for being here. Lunch Clubs are a monthly webinar series that we do. And we really put them together to try and bring you a way to learn new skills really quickly over the lunch break. I don't think that there's anything worse than sitting in a webinar and just listening to one of us drone on about something. That's really boring. I want to sit in webinars when I do those, and I actually want to learn how to do something. I want to learn a new skill that I can actually execute in my business and grow sales, change the culture, whatever that might be. So that's always our goal with these. So thanks for joining us. If you've never met with the SBDC, just real quick, I'll tell you a little bit about what we do, and then also a little bit about what Brian over here does. So the SBDC is a department of the College of Business at West Texas A&M University in Canyon. So our mission, it's a nationwide program that's funded by the Small Business Administration, and the state of Texas contributes as well. And we're just here to help people start businesses and grow businesses all across the Texas Panhandle. Because we get that federal funding, all of the consulting that we do is actually free. We've got two consultants in the office, Shane Groff and Anna Ramirez. If there's ever anything that you want to work on in your own business, just let us know. You should have our email address since you signed up for this. Shoot us an email and we'll get an appointment set up for you. We can meet in person, and we can even do over Zoom as well. It could be anything from cash flow projections, market research. You need a business plan. There's not a whole lot that we can't do. We can't give legal advice, and we don't do bookkeeping or accounting. But aside from that, we're glad to help you. So on the SBDC side of things, what we do is called consulting, and it's a little bit more focused on the business. It's technical assistance. On the flip side, Brian here is with our sister department, the WT Enterprise Center at West Texas A&M. And what Brian does, in addition to a lot of other things over there, is coaching with clients. And while what we're doing at the SBDC is focused on your business, what Brian's doing is really more focused on you as the business owner, as the entrepreneur. Maybe you want to develop your sales skills. Maybe you're really working on the culture of your business. Brian's going to spend time with you every month, one-on-one, helping to develop those skills with you and help you launch those in your business. So it's totally normal. We have a lot of shared clients. They work with both of us because we're both working on different aspects of the business. So this month, what Brian's going to be talking about is project management. That's actually his background, and I'm not just excited to be introducing him. I'm excited to watch because Lord knows I need some help keeping my own projects on task. So thank you, Brian. Brian is the managing director, the fairly new managing director since September at the Enterprise Center, where they do the coaching that I mentioned. He's also got a 31,000 square foot incubator, all kinds of programs like the Amarillo Enterprise Challenge, where they give away $500,000. You might have heard of that. It's a little bit of money. So Brian, I'm going to mute myself, and this is Lunch Club. This is literally Lunch Club. I'm going to eat my lunch. So sorry for your bad luck. You don't get to eat lunch. You have to teach all of us. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen while we get going here. Really excited to be with y'all today, and want to thank Gina and her staff for letting us tag along and have the opportunity to do this with y'all. Couldn't ask for a better opportunity. Let me see why my screen is
Looks
not
perfect.
Oh, can y'all see that?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, then I'll get rid of that. So again, my name is Brian Enevoldsen with the WT Enterprise Center, and we do work very closely together with the SBDC. My background is in project management, but I would beg to say that most people have experience to some varying degree with project management, just working in any kind of organization, because truly project management is one of those things that is to some degree present in every business. It can be an internal piece of what you're doing just to manage your own goals and development of business, facility, structure, employees, whatever that looks like. Or it could be the entire way you run your business, such as a construction company who manages and sells projects. And so really and truly, project management touches every aspect of any organization at some point in the course of its existence. Why I picked project management when I was doing my MBA to get specialized in is because it does, again, just speak to so many different varying industries. You can be truly successful in multiple different types of business and industry, just having a good grasp on project management. So project management, defined by Rory Burke, who is the author of Project Management Techniques, defines project management as a way of developing structure in a complex project where the independent variables of time, cost, resources, and human behavior come together. I always, when I teach this in person, the human behavior component is very alive and present in the room. And before we get really into it, I wanted to take a moment and say, this is a Q&A conversation the whole time through. So if I say something, if we're on a slide and you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand on Zoom, to unmute yourself, interrupt. You're not going to hurt my feelings. In fact, if I don't have to spend the next 45 minutes just hearing my own voice, I will count that as success. So please stop, ask questions, because that human behavior component can sometimes be the biggest variable and the biggest opportunity for learning. So take the opportunity to ask your questions as they come up. So getting into it, what truly is needed, and we'll kind of cover some components to be successful in project management. And the first and most importantly is there must be a single leader who is experienced and willing to take responsibility for the work. This is your project manager. If you're a big fan of The Office, there is a quote from that show that our staff actually gave to me in a Christmas present this December. Everybody loves the two popes. Everybody knows that the presidents of the United States of America work well together. Those are not real things, right? There needs to be, in order for a project to be successful, there needs to be one person who is held accountable for the work, who is readily and willing to take that accountability and responsibility and really put that project on their back. This is, in a large corporation, typically a mid to senior level manager who will work with senior executives as well as employees in the organization to make a project work. In smaller companies, small business America, this is typically the business owner or the director or the president, CEO, whatever the title may be. It's typically the business leader who is saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're headed. But again, a lot of benefit from having that one person, and just easily and naturally, there's one person to blame when things go wrong, right? If something didn't get done, there's not a finger pointing exercise. It is just driven to one person to say, hey, where did we drop the ball? What do we need to learn from this? And how can we avoid this problem in the future? The beautiful thing about project management as well is it's a learning process every time you do it. You can build the same house 5 different times. I worked for a contracting company for 5-6 years. You can build the same house 5 or 6 different times, and everything will be very similar, but each build will be unique. Maybe there's a delay in parts on one build. Maybe there's a delay in labor on another build. Maybe there's an issue with permits and administratively on a separate build. There's an opportunity in every single project that you go through to learn from it. And even if it's a very similar project or the exact same house, that's going to change time to time. So understanding that as your project manager grows, the experience and the ability to deliver with fewer errors or greater savings to the bottom line will only get better. So no one is a project manager, pro day one. That comes with time and experience. But to be successful, there needs to be one person that holds those reins. Moving on, and this is probably one of the bigger aspects of it in a mid to large size organization, is you have to have some support from management. If I give our program manager Michelle an opportunity to manage a project and say, hey, this is the desired outcome that I'm hoping for, here's the parts and pieces, but I don't support her, I have failed her, and I've also ultimately failed the project. So there must be an informed and supportive management that delegates the authority to the project manager. Going back to our first slide, you have that one person in charge. It does no good for there having to be a micromanager that has the true authority. And we can think through this. If you really stop and think about your own experience, there's probably a pretty good chance that you can think of a scenario where your supervisor did not really have the authority to be the supervisor, where they were more of a fill-in or a stand-in leader. That doesn't bode super well for getting stuff done, because ultimately I know that if I'm late on my assignment, if I don't do a good job, it's not you I have to worry about as my supervisor, it's your supervisor, right? So making sure that the project manager is supported, not just with resources, but also has delegated authority to make decisions in the project, to reinforce deadlines and goals, to hold people accountable to what they said they were asked to do, deliverables, right? That really, really will change the tone and the ability for the project manager to be successful, because at the end of the day, I have the backing of my leadership. And so they have asked me to do this. I am in charge of this, and I need you to get on board with where we're headed, or get off the team and go find somewhere else to be, right? So giving your project manager, or just as a project manager, making sure that you have the authority you need to be successful, and really have impact in the project, is an incredibly important piece of making the puzzle work. From there, we look at the team, right? We have a project manager in place. They are given the resources and authority to be effective. Now we're looking at the team. We need a dedicated team of qualified people to do the work. And I use those words very intentionally. They both have to be dedicated, but they both have to be qualified, right? If I show up to work and I'm a dedicated electrician, I've given my life to being an electrician, but there is no reason by my skill set why anyone should ever let me touch a panel, there's a problem. I can also be the most qualified person in the room. Let's say electricity again. I can be the most qualified electrician, but not have any dedication to my team or to the work or to the project, to my company. I'm also not a good fit. So really, when you're looking at who's going to carry this down the road, it's a mixture of both a dedication to the project and the team, as well as the qualified necessary skills to be successful in the work. Because it's not fair for a employee or team member to be asked to do something that they're not given the proper training or ability to really go and be successful. Again, when given this to organizations in the past, this is also a great opportunity to work on culture. How a team executes a project will show you more about an organization's culture than anything else could, because you're going to watch people work together. You're going to watch people solve problems together. You're going to watch delegation of authority, resources, and money. As well as how people operate under pressure. The culture of your organization will be highlighted, whether good or bad, by how projects are handled and managed. So not only does the project manager need to be supported and highlighted with resources and authority to be successful, there also needs to be a team of dedicated and qualified people who are willing to say, I need help, right? So at this point, there's a great opportunity to really reinforce communication and culture. If I ask you to go do something associated with this project and you are not qualified or capable to do it, 5 weeks from now is not the time to tell me. in the moment is the time to say, hey, I'd love to do that for you, but I'm probably going to need some help. I'm not super confident in that. So making sure that the team is supported to do the role, incredibly important. And the culture, again, will be highlighted in that opportunity. So the project goal must be clearly defined along with the priorities of the shareholders. When project management is taught in a university setting, it's often given in the context of software or technology development, where you have a group of investors that are paying for the process of the project to be developed, but then you also have the team that's doing the project work. So project managers are stuck in this middle quite often. In the context of a small to large to mid-sized business, this kind of really goes into, you might not have shareholders, you might be the investor who's interested in the success of the project. However, understanding that there are more people involved will really help you be successful. For example, if I am a subcontractor on a build, I need to know who my other subs are, not because I'm responsible for them, not because I delegate their work or sign their checks, but we are combined together working to accomplish a desired outcome or goal. And so knowing who the other players are, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. I often use the analogy of my son and his tennis shoes. My wife pointed this out to me one day. I come in every day from work, the same door, the same steps, I drop off stuff. Without fail, I see my son's shoes in the kitchen every single day. Every single day they are in the kitchen. Now I have a choice. I can either understand that I know this about my son, and I understand that that's probably going to be sitting there waiting for me even this afternoon. I can choose to get mad about it, or I can say, I'm probably going to have to remind him. And because I know that going into it, instead of getting upset and letting it ruin my day, I'm just going to say, hey, buddy, make sure to grab your shoes. Knowing who's involved will allow you to really get in the right state of mind, the right context, the right approach. You know who you work with to accomplish projects in your goal within your organization. Within WT structure, I can't be successful if the IT team is not successful in their duties. If our business office is not successful in their duties, there is a team that supports even the smallest project within our organization. So knowing all those individual players, maybe knowing that somebody's going to probably need an email reminder. It's not that they don't want to be helpful. They just probably need a little bit more reminding. Knowing that other people are going to get turned off by constant reminders and check-ins. That allows you to be successful in how you spend your time and ultimately the success of whatever project you're trying to bring to fruition. Just know the players, know their strengths, know the weaknesses, and adjust your communication and behavior to make sure that the project has the best chance of success. Again, do yourself a favor and don't be surprised by the same guy who's always late or always lazy. If you know about it ahead of time, plan around it and create an opportunity for that to still be a successful engagement. We don't always get to pick who we work with, but we can pick how we work with them. So the plan of attack, and I chose this picture on purpose, going back to my 11-year-old son. It's funny when he has all of his friends over, even at the age of 11, they'll gather all their Nerf guns and they'll go outside. They'll map out the house, what hiding spots are best, where am I going to move after I'm from here to there. They create a plan of attack for even something as silly as a Nerf competition or a Nerf war, if you will. In project management, your ability to plan and get ahead of things, especially foreseeable issues, is I wouldn't say the most important, but probably one of the most important pieces of you being successful. There must be an integrated plan that outlines the action that's required to reach the goal. There's one thing to say, and it's why we love entrepreneurs. I'm sure Gina could say the same thing. We love entrepreneurs because they come in with such a passion and a desire to start a business or a desire to change the world through a business. The end goal is never missing, right? They want the vacation house in Colorado. They want to build a wildly successful company, be a great boss that they never had for themselves, solve a real problem for society. There's such an easy component of going, I see where I want to go. Our opportunity and the reason our organizations exist is to really help people figure this piece out. Let's take a step back. We have the tunnel vision. Let's come back a little bit and go, what are all the pieces that are required for that to be successful? Do we have a plan to go after it? What if something goes wrong? What if cash flow goes down? How are we going to pay for our supplies and materials? Do we have a line of credit that we can count on? What if supply chain is still stuck in 2020 COVID? What if we can't get materials like we used to get materials? What if inflation causes our prices? What if we're pricing ourselves out of being in business? Are we looking for other suppliers? What's our backup plan for our backup plan? Now, granted, a lot of times the things that we're asking our clients to do is to take time and step back and evaluate the action that they have moving forward. And a lot of times that comes off as a step in the wrong direction. But I promise you, the ability to react to problems and issues that arise only are benefited by going, I've thought through this and I know what I'm going to do if A presents itself or B happens, right? So being able to sit down, create a plan for success and have your backup options in place will save you the reaction first and foremost, the mental breakdown and the screaming in your car and people wondering if you're mentally stable. It'll save you that opportunity, but it'll also save you a lot of time because you're just engaging your plan B. You're not having to stop and think through it. So getting a plan of action that's truly thought through A to B, or should say A to Z, will save you both time and mental capacity. Moving from a plan, we have a clear timeline. I am a big fan of project management tools like Asana. And I say that it's hard to adopt, but I say that because every task has the ability to be given with a deadline in mind. And so the team that was working on the project with you, you're not giving hey, can you take care of this for me? And then in 2 weeks, you come back and go, hey, where are we at with that? And they go, oh, I didn't know that you wanted me to go ahead and do that. So we have a saying with our clients, every task given should be communicated through a deadline, right? I need you to take care of this by Friday at noon. And if it's not going to happen by Friday at noon, I really need to understand why. What's the problem there that we can't get this done? This keeps your team on track. This will help with timeline. Ultimately, it helps with money and savings, right? And the more time spent on the project, typically more money spent on the project. So if we can do anything to shorten those timeline windows and really become efficient in what we do, man, that's not only money saved, but it's money earned, right? Your earning rate goes up because you're able to take on more projects because you're moving quicker through things. And again, going kind of back what we touched on with the project manager, if over time you see yourself doing the same project over and over and over and over again, then you have a real opportunity at hand to refine that and make it as efficient as possible. But understanding the timeline and what happens if we're a little bit behind on receiving goods or resources, or someone's a little bit slow to pay, or we lose staff, all of those things affect timeline and budget. So realistically, how long is it going to take you to accomplish the project that you're working on? And where do you need to be? What are your milestones so that we can truly say we're showing good progress and we're on track to be done by when we wanted? There's nothing worse than, and if you're anything like me, I do this all the time. Unfortunately, I'm at my house and I see an opportunity to organize a closet, and I have all this opportunity in front of me, so I rip everything out, and now everything's all skewed across my house. And I realize it took more time than what I had to give it. So now I'm leaving things in shambles. Yeah, not a good situation to be found with the wife, or even my own peace of mind in my house. So give yourself adequate time and think through what really is it going to take to be successful. This is also a great opportunity to allocate time for revision and just review. Just sitting down with the team and saying, hey, we've accomplished our milestone. Let's take an hour, let's take 30 minutes and review how that first session went. I don't know if y'all share this, but oftentimes when I'm getting to the end of a project, I'm just happy it's over. I'm happy if it's under budget. I'm happy if it's around the time that I thought it was going to be completed in. And to be honest, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So when you're thinking through timeline, if you can allocate some times for an opportunity for revision, one, the information is going to be a lot more fresh. Your team is going to be a lot more aware of the problems that they've experienced so far. And two, there's the ability to really not repeat issues, right? You get to the end and again, you forget everything that was bad and you're just so happy it's over. Give time for revision as you're going through that process. It's really, really important. Save you some money down the road.
Brian, you said to jump in when we had comments.
Yeah.
If y'all can't see me, I'll just add one thing to add to that. So our two departments over the last year, for those of you who haven't worked with us, we've started working much closer together than we had in the past and trying to combine projects. And I struggle sometimes with keeping things on task, and it gets complicated going back and forth. And I think one of the things that for us that's really been most important is to have somebody else to hold you accountable to that. You can set up the most beautiful plan that you want in Asana, but if there's not somebody else who's maybe on a peer level with you to hold you accountable to that and say, not just why didn't you get the work done, but why aren't you logging in and using it? Because sometimes I need you to ask me why I haven't logged into Asana in a month. It's really important to have that person. So maybe find it in your business, maybe it's a spouse or somebody else working on a project, but it really helps.
Yeah, and I love that, Gina, because how often are these organizations or businesses 1, 2, 3 people, and you don't have anybody there to say, hey, log into QuickBooks, maybe check your cash flow, maybe do this, maybe do that. So
It's not as no different than checking your cash.
yeah, it is important, even if it's a sticky note. Or Siri, golly, Siri is my favorite accountability buddy, because she doesn't care what my day's been like. She just leaves that reminder unread. Terrifying.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. And maybe also a good moment. Are there any questions so far from anyone else?
Y'all feel free to unmute yourselves, or you're also welcome to type it into chat, and Mackenzie and I are keeping an eye on chat.
Awesome. Well, we will keep trucking along then. Next is probably the most important to only one person, right? When I worked for a fire safety company, I was never privy to the budget. When we did a build or anything of that nature, an install on a new fire suppression system, I was not tracking my hours. I was not tracking my downtime. I was not tracking inventory waste. I wasn't tracking any of that because it was not my responsibility. Every time I get the opportunity, I reinforce this. Everybody should be aware of a budget. Everybody should be aware of budgetary goals, and everybody should be responsible for being in the know on how we're doing on achieving a project. There is no benefit to an employee, even if they're just a field technician, if they don't understand that by sitting there and throwing away inventory because it wasn't used on the job. Well, yeah, that directly affects their employment with the company long term, right? You have enough waste in an organization that you then have to start removing resources, including human resources, that really can be detrimental. If your entire team is all about saving inventory, saving resources, doing things efficiently, maybe let's not take 30-minute breaks on the job. Maybe let's not spend so much time in the office talking about the NFL game or the new season of Bachelorette. Maybe there's just a better way to spend our time so that everything is done profitably and benefiting the long-term goals of both just the project and the overall organization. So understanding the budget and required resources is absolutely key, but the project manager is typically held as the only person that sees or reviews it. And I would just argue every single day that there should be a team, if not individualized information, there should be a team effort around keeping projects on budget. Where can we save money? And don't ever feel like your employees can't be the source of an innovative thought. I'm reminded at that moment that the gentleman that created Mickey Mouse was the janitor at Disney, right? Some of the best ideas of cost savings and some of the best ideas of efficiency will come from the people that are doing the work, that are saving money and building capacity in your organization to turn out projects quickly and efficiently. And so it has to be a shared responsibility. Now, ultimately, you as the owner, you as the project manager will make decisions that directly impact that. But I'm always a fan of advocating for the shared general knowledge of what the budget is for a project and what the goals are, to see if you can be successful in that. I promise you, if you're just counting on one person to keep that budget in line, and they're not the person who's throwing stuff away in the dumpster, or there's not the person who's taking 30 smoke breaks in a day, they don't have the control that they need. It takes the team. It takes the team. So understand your budget and the required resources to be successful. And then my favorite, everyone must embrace and be held accountable for good communication. If our buildings are made of brick, if our projects are made of brick, the communication is the mortar. It is what holds it all together. If the project manager is not aware of an issue, if the team member is not aware of project changes, if the project has up and changed altogether and there's not good communication, you're going to have a lot of problems. And ultimately, you're going to hate the project, right? There will come a point when it starts to fall apart so fast that it's really hard to put it back together. You know, the analogy of being in a sinking ship trying to pell out water one bucket at a time, man, that's most easily arrived at just from a lack of communication. And so that's both downward communication and upward communication. Going back to the dedicated and qualified team members, if I ask you to go do a job that you know you can't do, it's in that moment that you say, hey, I'd love to do that, but I need more training or skill. Can you show me? Can you help me? Or can you assign someone to help me? Good communication is key both ways, and it has to be embraced both directions. I don't know how many times I've worked around construction companies or crews where they say, well, that's what I said, go do it. You know, time and place for everything, but if your employees or the team members of the project do not feel comfortable telling the project manager bad news, that's probably not a good place to be, because you're gonna find out about it, but it's not going to be at a time where you can do anything about it to salvage it. It's going to be at the end of the project when people are mad and money is gone, right? So getting people to a place where communication is both embraced, but they also understand they're accountable to communicate. I will be upset that you did not choose to communicate that with me. Those need to be real thoughts when considering taking on a project. Not just do we have the team, but does our team work together well enough and communicate well enough? Do we need to bring in a Slack, a Teams, a Asana, some software component to expedite, communication? One of the large organizations in our founders CEO roundtable group just recently adopted Teams and put their entire company onto Teams because everything was getting lost in emails. Little updates or little check-ins or little questions were getting buried in emails, and the turnaround time, I think, I could be wrong, but I'm not getting paid by Microsoft, so I can be wrong. The turnaround time averages for an email 5 to 6 hours. The turnaround time for a response in something like Teams or Slack is 4 to 5 minutes. So anything you can do to expedite communication and make those channels just really open and fluid so that people use them will absolutely pay dividends, both on the bottom line and the overall joy of doing the project. But highlighted there for you to see, everyone has to care to communicate. Everyone has to be a part of the team and embrace it is my responsibility to communicate. I can't wait for someone else to do it. So we have this wonderful, inspiring picture of people helping each other to the top of a mountain. And that is what project management is. You're ultimately managing a team for a desired outcome. And each one of these components, from a supported and delegated project manager to administration that supports that project manager, you have a team that's qualified and dedicated to complete the work. You understand other parties that are involved and the implications that those parties bring. If one guy moves slow, let's plan for that. Let's not be frustrated by it. We have a thought through plan that addresses all of the things that we need to consider in being successful. That plan is being given a timeline so we know when we're off track or not moving at the pace that we need to be to either be financially profitable or even just overall successful. We understand our budget and we have the required resources. And then we have a team that's dedicated to communicating each one of those levels independently and as an overall group. Those components put you on a pretty good track to be successful. Now, with everything, there are what we can control, and then there's what we can't control. So flipping the coin, there are some things that will cause us to come off track. And if anyone has, or if anybody would like to, I'd like to just stop for a moment and ask you, in your experience, what are some things that create problems with projects? Other than the third grade team where one person does all the work and the other kid picks boogers in the corner, what are some projects that have gone wrong and why?
For us, projects, and they may not have necessarily gone wrong, but they've definitely gotten off track, and we've had to have that last minute scramble. It's not taking the time ahead of time to just sit down for a few minutes, and it really doesn't even take that long, and just sketch out the overarching goals and what are the steps that we need to do to reach the goal. I mean, a good example is actually the webinar that you're doing today. So for those of you who haven't worked with us, we recently had a staff transition, and one of our staff members actually moved over to Brian's place, and it was the person who set this up and organized it. I'm not going to forgive you, Brian. And so Mackenzie and I, who are now responsible for organizing all of these, were sitting down together yesterday and realized, you know what? Brian's doing a webinar tomorrow. We probably should get some emails out. But if she and I had just sat down together last week and sketched out this email needs to go out at this time, we wouldn't have had to scramble at the last minute. It just seems like so many times what throws things off is really, really simple stuff that any of us easily handled.
Yeah, and that's such a good point too, because oftentimes, and I'm guilty of it with you, we say, I don't have time for that. And it's not prioritizing it, and then it bites you in the butt a couple days later.
Absolutely does. There's a lot of late nights that I have been working here and sat back and realized, if I had just sketched out my plan of action, I probably could have gotten all this done, well before I got kicked out of the building at 10 o'clock at night. Made much better use of my time and everybody else's time. It's really not that difficult. It just takes some self-discipline.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? All right. Well, in project management, there is a term called scope creep, that will haunt every project manager well beyond their grave. Scope creep is what happens when you get contracted to oh, well, here's an example. I GM'd a landscape company. Every single time my guys were out there, without fail, they'd get a phone call and I would say, hey, Mrs. Gina Woodward over here, we're mowing her yard. She came out and said, oh, I have these dead limbs in this tree over here. Would you mind go ahead and getting those cut down for me while you're here? You're already here. You have the equipment. Can you go ahead and do it? Now that's a very small example of what otherwise could be a very large situation. But in thinking through it from the project management side, if I get those guys to spend 20 more minutes at Gina's house cutting some dead limbs out, one, we've not arranged how we're going to get paid for that, and she's not agreed to a price. So I don't know if there's the implication that we're doing this for free because they're already there, and so we start to give away some value of our product or service. But two, it slows that whole team down. And in our company, we had a landscape crew that took care of the trees and the flower beds and the brick pavers and everything. And then we had a mowing team. The mowing team had one real easy job: mow. And while yes, they are capable of cutting down some dead limbs, they have 28 houses to mow in an 8-hour day. They don't need to spend even just 10 minutes longer on a job site, because it cuts into profitability and it cuts into other customers who are expecting to have their yard mowed that day. Now, granted, it's a very specific scenario, but this happens all the time. All the time this happens. And so what can we do about scope creep to really make sure that we're as planned for as we can? So early involvement in project discussions. If you're being asked to contribute to an overarching large goal with several other organizations, and even if it's even internal just to your own organization, get every party that's going to be involved in that conversation early. It does no good to have a really well thought out plan and then you have a meeting with 3 people who are unaware of anything that's going on. And in the first 15 minutes, they shoot holes in your well thought out plan that you've spent 2 weeks putting together. So if you can get ahead of it, figure out anything that could possibly go wrong with all the parties that are going to be involved and can contribute to that scope creep. Most of the time, from an external point, it's your customer really understanding what fully they are wanting. Internally, it's your staff, really understanding where your staff is in their work, the capabilities that they have. Maybe you have assumptions about your staff and their skill, knowledge, or expertise that maybe isn't right or accurate. And they have the ability to say, whoa, I love that you think of me so highly, but I can't do that. Now we got to go back to the drawing board. So just getting those conversations going early will really help that out. And then a clear and defined process for how changes are handled. In my scenario that I gave you, if my mowing guy knows, hey, that's not a phone call to Brian, that's a text message to the office manager that says, hey, send the landscaping crew by Gina's house. She has some dead trees. If we have a plan in place to handle that scope creep and that increasing ask, oh man, so much easier than having to stop everything to try and figure out how we're going to handle the situation. So have some of those processes and systems in place to support an ever-changing environment, because that's what we all operate in, right? We like to say we control more than what we do. So being defined in your processes is really going to pay dividends again. And then policies and written agreement, noting how changes will be handled. This allows my landscape guy, my mow guy, to say, oh, Miss Gina, we'd love to do that for you, but my boss is a real jerk. He doesn't let mowing guys touch tree trimming equipment. We don't even carry the equipment on our trucks to do that for you. Man, set yourself up to say no and reinforce your guys or your team, your overall team, to say no. It's entirely okay. to have a policy that supports the desired outcome of what we're getting to and keeps things in check. It kind of goes back to the authority that a project manager needs to be successful. Give them the tools and the abilities to keep everything in track, everything from project manager to your lower end employee. Let them know that you support anything that, if there's anything that's brought up that would distract from our goal, man, kick it to the curb and move down the road. A couple other things include kind of the opposite of everything we've talked about, right? So a lack of communication, that'll put you in a really gray spot because you don't even know things are bad and things are bad. That's terrifying. A lack of clear goals or metrics that are going to determine that success. So getting to a timeline or milestones, if those aren't in place, how do you know you're progressing in the project like you really want to? Budgeting issues. This is where experience and time is your best friend. I hired a he was new to landscaping, and I wanted my backyard leveled and sodded. And boy, that young man came in with a price that I made him shake my hand right there on the spot. I said, I'm going to hold you to that, buddy. Because he, knowing what I knew from my landscaping experience, there's no way he was making money off of that price, right? I just knew it wasn't going to work. Come the day that it was time to pay, I brought that back up and I said, hey, I want, because I really was trying to just help someone out, right? I said, I knew that when you gave me that bid, it was too low. And so, because he already had the face, he was coming to ask for more money. And so I beat him to it. I said, I knew that price was a little bit lower than what it really should have been. You did a good job. What do you need for this to be a good project for you? And then we negotiated that increase. But time and experience will be your best friend when it comes to budgeting. Again, going back to the house, budgeting for unforeseen issues. If you build something 10 times over, you should probably have a pretty good idea of what it costs and where you might need to budget some extra padding just to make sure that changes that come up don't put you in the red. Inexperienced team members, that'll cause you to fail. There's only the capability of your team. You can have the best project manager in the world. If you are counting on people that are not capable of doing the task at hand, then it's just not going to be successful. There's no other way to say that. So knowing your team and their experience, what they're capable of, will really, really help you in that. Inadequate risk management, not having a plan, just saying we're going to figure it out as we go. Some of the scariest words ever uttered in the life of businesses. Please don't do that. Work with Gina's team, work with our team. Manage your risks and be aware of them. Be aware of the worst situation possible so that you can be prepared for when it might come. Lack of accountability kind of goes back to communication and timeline, but holding people accountable. Can I go up to my boss? And I've told the staff here, I don't know if they'll take me up on it, but if you've asked me for something and I continually put it off, I'm counting on them to come up and say, hey, I've asked you for this. You've put it off 2 or 3 times. I really need it by this date. That is huge because they're helping our organization be successful by keeping me on track. Because I'd like to say I'm perfect, but they will tell you, and I will tell you, there's no chance I am. Limited engagement of stakeholders. So that's just all the parties that are involved. Again, let's talk to them. Let's be with them as often as we can. Let's go buy lunch. Let's go grab a drink. Let's get coffee. Building in those times of check-ins and making sure that everybody that's involved in the project is happy with where we're headed and what's happening in the project. And unrealistic deadlines. If somebody came in and said, hey, Brian, well, this happens sometimes. An entrepreneur will come in and say, man, I need to make $100,000 and I need to do it in 3 days. The chances of success in that are probably pretty small unless they know something I don't, or they are selling drugs, right? I don't know if I can say that. I know it's being recorded. I apologize to anybody who's watching if they're disappointed. But unrealistic deadlines are not going to do you any good. they're going to stress your team out. They're going to stress you out. They're going to put tension in your communication because nobody's happy with the amount of time they're given to do the work. It could take something otherwise that you'd be proud and feeling that feeling of accomplishment. It'll take that away quicker than anything because you've not given yourself the time or even provided yourself the chance of being successful. So think through the project and be realistic with your goals of where you're going to be in terms of deadlines. The thing that I would like to encourage all of you with is project management is the ever evolving process of managing people, resources, time, and budget, right? And you only get better as that goes along. And so if one project doesn't go well, it's not the end of the world. What needs to change in our process and the way we prepare for projects, the way we handle projects, what needs to change? Anybody that's in any kind of organization, there's a chance for revision and refinement. And every single project, there stands the same opportunity. And once you figure it out, it's so good. That's when your bandwidth gets bigger. That's when your capacity becomes more, and you get to start making some really, really fun projects and changes in an organization. And with all that, I will open it up. Yep, we have just a few 5 or 7 minutes for Q&A. I want to respect y'all's time and be out of here by 1. But more than happy to follow up with anyone as they need it. But just ready to answer any questions if there are any out there.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Y'all are welcome to unmute yourselves if you like. You can also type in chat. I'm also going to launch just a super quick survey if you'll let us know how we did today. I think the 2 things that I really took away from today is 1, make sure that you plan ahead. And again, just like sending the email for your webinar that you're doing today and not doing that till yesterday, it's always so much easier than you think it's going to be. A lot of it just has to do with self-discipline and making yourself sit down and just write down a list. It doesn't have to be complicated of what is it that I actually need to get done. And the second thing for me is that accountability. In our organization, you and I are at a peer level and we can have the benefit of holding each other accountable. If you're in a small business where you might be the only business owner and you don't have that partner to hold you accountable, maybe it's a spouse. I've actually had some clients who are in that situation where it was just them. They didn't have employees, not married, and they just had me put a reminder on my calendar. And once a week, every Friday morning at 10, it was my job to call him and say, have you gotten up and have you gotten your duties for the week done today? That's what he needed. So find a way to do it, whether it's friend or family, or maybe even somebody at WT. Perfect. Well, if there's nothing else, y'all are welcome to hang out if you have any questions that you want to ask of Brian. Otherwise, I hope you have a lovely Wednesday. If you're here in the Texas Panhandle, we're downtown and I am looking out my window right now. And there's definitely a lot more brown in the sky than blue. So be careful if you're out there driving today, but have a wonderful day.